The long read was
Have you ever seen a fleeting shadow in the corner of your eye? Or heard a whisper on the wind that seemed just a little too clear? Then I have just the podcast for you. Sightings is the hit series that invites you inside the world's most mysterious, unexplained events. From epic encounters with legendary creatures to spine-tingling bumps in the night that I guarantee you've never heard before. But Sightings doesn't just recount what happens. It puts you at the center of the action with its heart-pounding storytelling, music, and sound design. Each episode combines a never-before-heard story of an infamous supernatural encounter with mind-bending investigations that will leave listeners questioning what's real and what's possible. Episodes cover everything from eerie ghost stories to creature encounters to mysteries with sci-fi vibes. So whether you're a skeptic or a believer, step inside the stories you only thought you knew with Sightings. Listen to Sightings now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
You can't allow that distraction to distract you from what you're supposed to be doing.
all the presidents. That was the only way he could get in.
Good evening and welcome to Monsters Among Us. I'm your guide, Derek Hayes. Well, we're in it now, folks. The dog days of summer. It happens every year. But of course, around these parts, they're referred to as the Dogman days of summer. But I digress. I have a great one lined up for you here this evening. An episode full of monsters, mysteries, and mayhem. And we're not going to waste much time in getting started here this evening. Here with something out of your worst nightmares is Julie from the Yellowhammer State.
Hi, I'm Julie from Alabama. I'm 53. My experiences started at a very young age. Grew up Southern Baptist. A real live witch lived down the hill from us. I never asked to be interested in the occult or ghosts or things of that nature, but it seems to have sought me out. There is one story that I am still looking to hear, maybe if someone else has experienced this spirit. Years later, after a marriage and tornado, after God devastation, divorce, and I bought land in Hatchie, Alabama, near the Janie Furnace. Civil War, Jackson stationed his troops there. But there was one spirit that I had seen, and I had told my fiancé about the man with changing faces. And when I had seen the spirit, and I don't remember what night it was, I had seen so much in my life. But at my rough cut cabin out on 16 acres, untouched, just woods. And I grew up in the woods. I love the woods. I saw this spirit, all I could see, basically, and he was all in black, is that when I looked into his face, it changed. And it would change from, let's say, a skeleton face to a normal face. And it was just like it faded in and out. Okay, freaked out. I waited a while, and, I'm hesitant to tell people about all my experiences growing up. Seeing spirits, ghosts, evil and good. And I knew it was evil. I knew it was not good. One night we were sleeping and my fiance, he shook me up out of a dead sleep. And we were camped out behind the cabin. And he shook me up out of a dead sleep, scared me to death. He said, Julie, I saw the man with changing faces. I saw him sitting over there by the garbage can. I saw him sitting on the bucket. The man with changing faces. And I was like, it's okay, and I have to sleep, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I just can't. So I rolled back over, but I wanted to look out the window, and I saw the silhouette of him, and I just rolled back over and said, nope, not doing this tonight. I am not doing this tonight. But if you could maybe help me, and maybe it'll just get it out there that the man with changing faces. My fiance is now dead. He died of natural causes, young, and it was traumatic. And several things happened at that cabin, like a bluebird knocking on the window followed him in every window we went to. And as we all know, when the bluebird knocks on your window, that does mean that someone's going to die. And he did, and he was diagnosed, and it was terrible. We went through. But, I'm Christian, and this has taken a lot for me to come to terms with, as I realize that I have a gift and that I am a seer. And for me to say that to anyone, especially someone that does a podcast, is unreal to me right now as I'm doing it. But it is true. And everything that I say, that I've seen, and everything that prophetic dreams I've had, and every experience I've had is real. Thank you for what you do. You're really helping me, giving me strength to call and maybe reach out.
Thank you, Julie. And I'm sorry for your loss. The man with changing faces. Well, that is quite the handle. But did I ever tell you about the time a tornado passed by somewhere near our elementary school? I was in 3rd grade at the time, and it was the middle of a normal school day. Everyone was fine and there was no real damage done, but it was pretty gnarly outside. Super dark out. Tons of thunder and lightning and high winds. And as a kid, it's all a little freaky. Well, at a certain point, they moved us all into the cafeteria, away from windows and doors. But on the way there, one of the kids started getting agitated. It wasn't long before others around him began to scream and cry as well. Eventually, we got to the bottom of all the commotion. And what it was is that original kid, whose name was Aaron, I believe, claimed that he saw a skeletal figure looking in one of the windows. Now, I thought at the time, and still think, it was simply a kid, being a kid and letting his imagination get the better of him. But the story still sticks to me to this day, mostly because of how the other kids reacted to his claims. They instantly believed him, and they were immediately terrified. Anyway, Julie's story here made me think of that memory, and since this is a place for sharing stories, well, there you go. So thank you, Julie, for sharing your story. I think most would prefer not to see a ghostly face, but I bet even more would prefer not to see a skeletal version. And I would say that it's hard to blame them. Alright folks, things are just heating up here and I have all kinds of terror ahead for you. But first, a quick break from tonight's sponsors.
Close to 90 degrees for Los Angeles downtown. I went from whiplash to whipping up.
Horror movies are a scary good time, but did you know that audio horror storytelling is considered by many to be even scarier than movies? With audio horror, you use your own imagination to create the scenes, which makes horror feel more immersive. So if you're ready for an experience like that, then brace yourself for the sleepless nightmares of the No Sleep podcast. The No Sleep podcast is one of the premier horror storytelling podcasts, now in its 13th year. No Sleep takes audio horror storytelling to a new level. Immersive sound design and custom music scores complement a full cast of voice actors who brings the anthology of creepy tales to life. This weekly, multi-award-winning podcast is the perfect way to experience stories that'll keep you up at night. The No Sleep Podcast is available wherever you get your podcasts. Visit thenosleeppodcast.com to learn more about the show and find hundreds of hours of archived episodes.
Case without knowing all the details.
Somewhat happily tried to play that out.
Now, folks, this next call comes to us out of Utah. Please welcome Thomas to the program.
Hey, Derek. My name's Thomas. I currently live in Eagle Mountain, Utah, but this story takes place in Cedar City, Utah, more specifically Enoch, Utah. It's a very happy story, actually, which, sometimes it's great to hear with all the crazy, scary stories I hear on your show, which are amazing. We had a dog growing up, and her name was Nellie. She was a cane corso, and she was a very loving dog. The way we came about the dog is she kind of found us, but she became part of our family, and my dad never wanted a dog, but our whole family just loved this dog. And my dad is an avid mountain biker, and so he had some friends come up from California to mountain bike with him out down in St. George, Utah. And we're sitting around the house. I'm taking a nap on the couch, and I hear my mom come in from outside, and she's crying. And I couldn't figure out why she was crying, so I asked my mom, "What's wrong?" And she says, "Nellie's dead." And Nellie had just gone outside and laid down in her portion of our backyard and had died. And so, our whole family's distraught, and we're crying and not having a great time. And my mom calls my dad, says, "Hey, you need to get back home. Nellie's dead, and we're going to bury her tonight." So, my dad is like, "Okay, we'll be there as soon as we can. We're lost." And my mom's like, "Well, you gotta get home. You gotta get home as fast as you can." And so my dad and his friends are looking around, trying to figure out where they lost themselves on this mountain bike path, because it's getting dark. And then my dad notices a set of paw prints, and the paw prints are going in a direction, and he's like, "Oh, that's weird." And so he follows these prints for a minute, and then he finds the main trail. So he goes back and grabs his buddies and says, "Hey, I found the trail." My dad notices the prints don't just stop when they hit the main trail. They go all the way back to the parking lot, and they stop right where their car is, like the dog jumped into the car. Now, he doesn't remember there being footprints there because, our dog Nellie was a cane corso, and they're big paw prints. They're the size of my dog's paw prints, and he was pretty sure to this day that Nellie was the one that brought him back to the car so that he could say his goodbyes. And yeah, that's my story. Keep up the good work, man. This podcast scares the daylights out of me, and I keep finding myself coming back to it. So yeah, thanks. Take it easy.
Thank you, Thomas. Man, losing a pet really sucks. But I guess it's made a little better with stories just like this one, that at the very least suggest that there is some sort of afterlife, even for our beloved animals. And what an incredible turn of events. Nellie apparently making one last stop to help Thomas's father find his way on the trail. Like I said, incredible. And as Thomas referenced, one of the few positive stories we get to play here on the program, aside from Nellie's passing, of course. So we appreciate the time, Thomas. We're sorry for your loss, and thank you for calling in. And folks, if you too have a story you would like to share here on the program, give my hotline a call, 888-608-NIGHT. That's 888-608-NIGHT. Or you can record your story on your phone or computer and email the file to me at monstersamonguspodcast@gmail.com. Now don't forget, there are a few simple rules. Be sure to keep those in mind when you call in. One story per call. If you need more time, just call back in and pick up where you left off. And you can call in as many stories as you'd like, but only one story per phone call, please. That helps us keep all this stuff organized. true stories only. Secondhand stories are okay, as long as they're good and as long as you believe they occurred. And lastly, but most importantly, call from a quiet place. Calls made from vehicles are almost never shared on the program, even though I receive them all the time. The sound quality is just complete garbage. And lately, we've had a lot of complaints about the sound quality on the show, which frankly is out of our hands. That's just how telephone calls work. But regardless, we spend a ton of time trying to improve on that sound. So I tell you, there is one thing you can do to ensure the sound is top quality here on the program, and that's submit from a quiet room. Trust me when I say, your voice will be so much clearer that way. And don't forget, if your youngster has a story they would like to share on Monsters Among Us Jr., they can call that hotline at 833-MAU-KIDS, or the email is monstersamongusjr@gmail.com. No matter where you leave your call, we appreciate you helping to keep the magic alive. Now, speaking of magic, this next one almost seems like some sort of magic. Please welcome Mike, all the way from Connecticut.
Hey, Derek. Mike from Connecticut. This happened to my brother somewhat recently, about a year ago. This happened at Coldbrook Reservoir. If anyone's from around here, they most certainly know where it is. It's a man-made reservoir built by the Army Corps of Engineers, early 1900s sometime. But anyways, he's parked up there with his girl. This is late at night, and they're just sitting out there, talking, whatever. And all of a sudden, she says to him, "What the hell is that?" She points, across the water, and they look out, and there's they could see light above the water, but it also looked like there was light under the water. He said it was about the size of a school bus, like a dull kind of orange light. Like I said, you could see like a glow above the water. It looked like whatever was producing the glow was underneath the water. And it came across the reservoir. No noise, nothing. Came to one side, went back across, and when it gets to the other side of the reservoir, he has trouble describing this part to me, like exactly how it looked, but in some way or another, it comes up out of the water and goes out into the woods. He said the only way he could describe it is just like an oblong light, like a glowing mass. He was totally weirded out by it. His girlfriend, to this day, she gets kind of weird talking about it. Like, she says, "Oh, I think it was must have been a reflection of a car driving by." There weren't no cars driving by, nothing, If my brother tells me something, it's solid. Pretty weird.
Thank you, Mike. That is pretty weird. And I think what Mike is describing is what many in the field refer to as USOs, unidentified, submerged objects, which I guess at a certain point, in this story at least, it morphed into a plain old UFO, an unidentified flying object. But whatever it was, like you said, Mike, it's pretty weird. But believe it or not so weird for the state of Connecticut, because there seems to be some sort of connection between UFOs or USOs and the water there in that state. Now, Delaney dug up the following News Nation article that elaborates on this notion. Something unexplained is happening over a reservoir in Connecticut. On the back deck of a community center in Fairfield County, a woman named Diane says she saw a light in the sky, potentially an unidentified aerial phenomenon, during what was otherwise a routine shift in April of 2022. She's the second witness to come forward this year after a reported close encounter with a UFO near a Fairfield County reservoir. In an exclusive interview last month, Robert Klein, a 25-year-old law enforcement veteran, told News Nation about a similar incident, during which he encountered a spherical object, approximately the size of a Mini Cooper, hovering just 30 feet from his patrol car. Now here's a short clip describing the encounter that Officer Klein had that evening. See if you notice any similarities.
And on that particular April night, Officer Klein was barely into his overnight shift when he says his patrol car filled with light on a dark stretch of road that runs along a lake. Sounds a lot like what Richard Dreyfuss saw. The light was different from anything he'd ever seen before. It glowed like this, like red and green and white and orange, changed colors over and over, and it hovered over his car before flying, zipping across the lake in the blink of an eye, aka not earthly speeds.
Again, this activity is at the very least connected to a lake or possibly even emanating from it. And like I said, it seems to be a common occurrence in this part of the country. And these events are so common that they're even historic. Because what many consider to be the very first UFO sighting in these United States took place not all that far from where Mike had his experience. Less than 150 miles, to be exact, which is mere seconds for these reportedly highly capable craft. And what makes the following encounter even more relevant is that it too involved objects going in and out of the water. And of course, it's worth noting that the descriptions given of the phenomena sound eerily familiar to all of those Connecticut reports. The following blurb was from the website celebrateboston.com, and keep in mind that these events occurred in 1644. Captain John Shattuck's ship blew up at Battery Street in the North End. 5 men lost their lives. Soon after, unexplained lights appeared in the sky. Exactly 16 days after the blowing up of Captain Shattuck's ill-fated ship and crew, 3 men in a boat saw 2 bright lights rise out of the water at the place where the vessel had been blown up. Now, the size of these unidentified objects seems to be the only thing that's different in each of these descriptions. Otherwise, each witness seems to be describing something eerily similar. A glowing, rather large object in or around water that moves at an incredible rate. And this is where the trail runs cold, at least for now. But if you find yourself in Connecticut and you have a similar story, be sure to send it in. I'm all too happy to keep pulling at this thread until something comes loose. Thank you again, Mike, for the deep dive. Now, this next one is another mystery, but a whole new ball of yarn. Please welcome Grace from the state of Illinois.
Hi, Derek. This is Grace calling from Chicago. So I'm listening to your episode, season 19, episode 17, where people are talking about things disappearing and appearing, I guess, out of nowhere. And I have a story that I thought of when I was listening to this episode. So in my spiritual practice, I use different herbs and whatnot. And specifically, one thing that I had used before was sage, but because of cultural appropriation, it's something that I had thought about and thought isn't appropriate for me to be using in my own practice. So I was a little conflicted because I had been gifted some and wasn't sure on if it would be more respectful to use that up or to just stop using it. And it was something I was thinking a lot about, and out of respect, I just decided, you know what, I'm not going to use it, and I'll find out an appropriate way to respect the sage I do have without using it or burning it. So I made that decision in my mind. It's not something I shared with anybody. It was just a personal decision, something I had been thinking about. And that very same night that I made the decision to not use it in my practice and to get rid of the stuff that I do have, a bundle of sage appeared in our front yard. And I do have a Ring doorbell, so we have footage of this that I'll send over for you. But like I said, I didn't share this with anybody. And the very next morning, my partner comes in the house and says, "Hey, did you leave this outside?" And he shows me, and it's a bundle of sage. And I literally froze, got full body chills, and thought he was messing with me or something. And then I realized that there's no way he could have been messing with me. I didn't even share with him that this was something I was thinking about or conflicted about. But he said he found it in the front yard and just thought I had left it out there. And when I went back into the Ring doorbell footage, it literally just appears. There's nobody that is there. It's just not there 1 minute, and then it's laying on the sidewalk the next. So I'll send it to you. You can see that there's no activity. There's no person that comes and puts it there. It's just not there, and then it's there. And you can see my partner in the morning going out and letting our dogs out and looking at the sidewalk and picking it up and bringing it into the house. And you can kind of get a glimpse at what it was. But yeah, it was literally a bundle of sage that I still have. I've never burned. Not sure what to do with it, but I felt like it was a little bit of a message from the universe. I'm not sure what the message was, if it was saying this is okay to use, this is not okay to use, but just for my own peace of mind, I have not used it since. So yeah, I just thought that was a relevant story, and I love the show. Keep it up. Thanks, Derek.
Thank you, Grace. Now, thankfully, Grace was true to her word and did send in the video and a photo of the bundle to boot. You can head on over to our show notes and take a look at monstersamonguspodcast.com and by clicking on the show notes tab. Now, at the 10-second mark of both of those videos, you can see the bundle seemingly materialize there on the edge of the sidewalk, almost out of nowhere. But if you scrub through, you can see that there is someone dressed all in black that walks by just moments before the sage appears. So is there any way that mystery person in black is our culprit? Now, like I said, all the resources are in our show notes, so go take a look and tell me what you think. And thank you again, Grace, for sharing the entry.
So you think he caused a lot of death and destruction, but
Med didn't guarantee him money. 4 or 5 years.
Front center, me.
When they won a couple 3 Super Bowls, so.
Okay, for this next entry, we must cross the pond. Please welcome Katie, all the way from the UK.
Hello again, Derek. I was working in a horror maze, but when you work in these places as an actor or indeed any role, you're not scared because you're at work. So it wasn't like we went in every day terrified because we, as the actors, were the scariest thing in the building, technically, and the customers had to beware of us. There was nothing for us to worry about. Now, this particular building was actually an old kind of steamer ship, I guess. It was just like this old wooden boat thing that used to run up and down the river at the theme park, but now has since been converted into, I think, a restaurant. And after that, it was converted into like a learning centre, so it was classrooms. And then they converted it into a horror maze. So there's no real reason for it to be haunted whatsoever. There was one corner of the boat, though, that nobody liked to go to. It was just a bit oppressive. It just wasn't a great feeling when you went in there. I'd much rather hang out in any other room apart from the sort of back corner. Now, this is actually where my story takes place. There's a very linear route that the guests have to walk in this maze, So you come in at one end, you sort of walk through in one line, and you walk out of the exit. So I was actually working in one of the rooms, and I decided to go forward in the maze to the previous room to see if there was a group on their way. And in the doorway, they had these kind of freezer flaps. So at a supermarket or a big industrial freezer where there's those big like rubber strips hanging down to keep the cool in. There were those in the doorways between the rooms. So I walked, like I said, forward in the maze. So I went through that room's exit and I pushed at the flaps and there was somebody coming through. So I sort of ducked to the side. I thought, oh no, I don't want a customer to just see me wandering through and not in my scare position. And nobody came through. So I pushed again and there was still some kind of friction there. So I stepped back again, expecting somebody to come through. And there was nobody there. So I went back to the flaps and I pushed again and there was still somebody there. But this time, a human hand came through the flaps and I grabbed at it. I sort of felt it with my fingers and sort of did this kind of little grabby thing, a sort of, which one of my friends is this? Whose hand is this kind of thing? I literally quickly stuck my head through the flaps to see who that hand belonged to. And there was no one there. There was absolutely nobody there. Like I said, this happened at the exit to the room. The entrance to the room was on the other side of a concrete bed. So you either had to climb over the bed or you had to run around the bed. And either way, you cannot go from me holding your hand, whipping back the curtains, to be completely disappeared. There's no way. I looked everywhere. I went through the maze and said, who the hell was that? Now, as if that wasn't weird enough, I then walked back to my own position, thinking, sort of shaking my head like, what the actual hell was that? And I went back to where I was supposed to be. And my friend was there and she said, oh my God, you scared me. What are you doing here? And I said, this is my position. She said, no, I came onto your position because I saw you leave. You ran up the corridor past me and I knew it was time for me to come back off my break and cover you because you'd already left your position. I saw you run past already. So at the same time that I'm literally touching the hand of a ghost, she saw me run up the hallway, go into the staff room on my break and essentially tell her to go back to her position. So that absolutely freaked us both the hell out. We're still friends to this day and we still say, oh my God, remember when I was touching a ghost and you were seeing my doppelganger? It was just the weirdest possible thing that could happen. There's not many people that look like me, by the way. I'm 6 foot tall. There was just nobody else. Also, we all had our own costume and I was wearing my costume and she saw me wear my costume. So I can't explain it. It was just freaky as hell. So there you go. Thanks, Derek. Keep it up. Bye.
Thank you, Katie. A real-life haunted house. Now, we've had the luxury of hearing a few calls like this one over the years. Real paranormal experiences in a pretend paranormal setting. I believe we even had a Sasquatch experience on a haunted trail, if I'm not mistaken. Or maybe that one's still coming up. Either way, I find it a bit ironic, the fact that those that are doing the scaring had a little scare of their own. So thank you again, Katie, for sharing the submission. Well, folks, since we're traveling overseas, let's make one more stop before we head back home. And let's visit a continent we very seldom hear from. Please welcome Anonymous to tonight's program.
Good afternoon. I can't tell you my name, and this isn't exactly my story. Due to the nature of my father's work, I can't tell you his name or my brother's name, but I can tell you what happened. So my father used to work in Botswana with a people group called the Kalahari. So my family and I, we lived there for around 5 years. in the Kalahari Desert in Botswana. We only get rain once a year, give or take. Generally, it's hot and sunny in the day, and it can be cloudy, but it's unusual. Usually we get rain for a week straight once a year. I was not present for the event I'm about to describe, but my father told me about it after the fact, and my brother does not like to talk about it and would not comment when I asked him for details. He does still have physical evidence of the event, so I'll just get into it. I used to have a friend who lived on a farm, so I stayed out on the farm with him. We worked on school and farm tours and whatnot. However, one of these times when I was staying out on the farm, and this would have been in 2011, I believe, my father said that my brother came running to him one day complaining of a searing pain on his arm, saying that something had bit him. And on his arm, he had raised blisters on the top and bottom of his forearm in the shape of teeth marks. And I had yet to learn about this creature or demon or spirit or whatever, but apparently it's known to the locals as the Tokolosi, and it is a spirit or creature that attacks women and disobedient children. And apparently it's only visible to the person whom it's attacking. And there has been a single instance where one was captured in a suitcase reportedly. I don't know whether or not that was a hoax. What I do know is that my dad had to actually consult one of our friends in the village to figure out what to do about this, because my dad, being a Christian spiritual person, tried to pray for it to leave and it would not. And it ended up being that my dad's coworker told him that my brother had to repent of his disobedience and to renounce it in order to get the Tokolosi to release him. All the while he is in a panic, and these blisters on his arm, they're not moving. And he is clearly panicked. He's looking at it and can clearly see something that none of the rest of them can. And so my father relays to him what he has to do. He did that, and the Tokolosi released him and vanished from my brother's vision. The blisters on his arm stopped looking inflamed and red almost immediately, I'm told, and they took a few days to vanish, but he still has got marks on his forearm from where it bit down on him. And so for the next, month, he was absolutely a golden child, on the best behavior ever. This took place during the day. We lived in a village called Kang in Botswana. It's spelled K-A-N-G if you want to look it up. I was trying to learn more about the folklore in the area at the time when this occurred. I'm not sure that I really believed it per se, but that was the story as it was relayed to me. All right, thank you very much. Look forward to hearing more of your podcast. I absolutely love it. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, caller. The Tokolosh. That's one creature I never thought we'd get to talk about. But believe it or not, the Tokolosh was already on my radar, thanks to a Sci-Fi Channel television program from the late aughts, Josh Gates's Destination Truth. The following is how this odd entity was first sold to me.
Predominantly seen in Zulu regions of the country, the Tokolosh has found its way into the mainstream media in several famous South African murder trials, where defendants claimed they had killed someone believing they were the Tokolosh, and one court was so convinced by the defendant's testimony about his Tokolosh encounter, they decided not to call an expert witness to refute his claims. Reportedly, it's a flesh and blood creature that also has the ability to manifest itself in ghost form.
I'm definitely getting Wendigo vibes here. Now you can watch the full episode for free over on the Roku channel, and there's a link in tonight's show notes. But spoiler alert, Josh and the gang do not catch the Tokolosh. Believe it or not, it just slipped out of their grasp. But if you would like to learn more about this creature, here is a quick description from the Queen of Monsters herself, Dr. Emily Zarka, from PBS's Monstrum.
The basic description is a short, powerful, half-human, half-animal being that feeds off of the dark energy created by harassing humans. They are active at night and are almost always small, hairy, goblin-like creatures. Some say they have long ears, maybe even a tail. The one thing they all have in common is some kind of relationship with a witch. A Tokolosh may even be considered a witch's familiar, or as one South African told me, their sidekick. But this is no Batman and Robin situation. The Tokolosh carries out any work the witches hesitate to do themselves for fear of retaliation.
Now you can also watch that full episode for free over in our show notes. And as a PBS program, they can use all the support they can get right now, more than ever. So that's a bit of a crash course on the entity known as the Tokolosh. Now go back and listen to our caller's story again, with a whole new understanding. And thank you again, caller, for sharing that unique story from such a distant land.
I know what I want, and I let my scouts do their job.
Those things did not transpire.
What a freaking mess.
Of Churchill's World War II history, the very first.
Now, if you would, meet me back in Utah, where we rendezvous with Carver about a strange event that he witnessed. Welcome to the program, Carver.
Hi, my name is Carver Morris. I live in Riverton, Utah, almost Harriman, Utah, which is close to the Kennecott copper mine. Anyways, I was looking for meteors during the Perseus meteor shower at 11 p.m. at night. I was just sitting in my backyard and just looking for meteor showers when, there was a line or something, almost a ghostly line go across the sky. And then a few minutes later, another one came, and it looked like it was kind of squiggly, and then it turned into a diamond shape. And it happened 2 more times, and then I got my roommate, and he also saw it. We don't know what it was. And when he went back in after seeing it 2 times, I saw it a few more times, and the last time it was even bigger, and it looked like it was made of little dots. So, if anyone knows what this is, really appreciate it. Slightly concerning. This is my first paranormal thing I've ever had, or close to, so it could be a drone, because it was silent, but yeah, I don't know. So if anyone knows what it was, Riverton, Utah, August 11th, 12th, 11 p.m. to midnight, please let me know, and just at least call in. Big fan, listen a lot, so thanks, bye.
Thank you, Carver, for ringing in. What do you think here, folks? Can anyone help Carver out? One guess that I have is that this might have been some sort of secret aircraft, very high up in the upper atmosphere. Perhaps the lines that he saw were simply contrails, left by the experimental jet. That could explain why he couldn't hear it as well, and why maybe Carver couldn't exactly make out the object. Now again, this is just my guess. Who knows what Carver saw up there? But we sure do thank him for sharing it with us. Alright, this next one is a little bit gruesome, so don't say that I didn't warn you. Please welcome William from the state of Idaho.
Hello, my name is William.
I'm in Boise, Idaho now, but I grew up in Sacramento, California, and lived in California most of my life. I graduated high school in 2006 and really liked doing road trips, often by myself, driving at night. So I had a bunch of friends that went off to college all up and down the California coast. And there was a night that I drove from San Francisco down to Santa Cruz. And if you've done that drive, you know it's really pretty. It's awesome. It was summer. I think it was in June or July. And I had left San Francisco, I think it was about 10 or 11. So it was around midnight, maybe even after midnight that this happened. But there was a stretch of highway probably an hour before you get to Santa Cruz. This is Highway 1 again. And the stretch of highway, you kind of come out of the trees and it drops down and there's a cliff to your right. There was a bright moon. I don't remember if it was a full moon. In my memory, it looks like a full moon because you could definitely see a lot at night for, you know, how bright the moon was. I drove a Subaru, kind of like a modified car. So I was always on the lookout for cops. I had a police radar, and I like to drive at night for that fact where I could usually drive pretty fast, you know, being able to catch police before they caught me, essentially. But when I dropped down and I was on the flat part of this highway, I saw police sirens coming up from behind me. And I was like, oh, shoot, like, maybe they got me. And then, you know, it looked like they were hauling behind me, coming. So I started slowing down. And then when he got maybe 40 feet behind me, he went into the other lane and flew past me, like maybe going 100 is what it looked like. And as he went past, I noticed it was an old car, like an old Crown Victoria, the square body ones. I was like, that's weird. Maybe they're still using those cars on Highway 1. And he just kept flying down the road, got back into the right lane and kept going. And then, I don't know, maybe a half a mile ahead of me, he did a really fast left turn and looked like he went into, on the left side of the road was just tall grass until it hit the woods that are out there. And you could see the siren going through the tall grass and then like up into the woods. And so in my head, I was like, okay, well, there's probably a dirt road that he's on and he's going out there. Okay, whatever. Didn't think twice about it. As I'm driving, you know, the speed limit, I don't see a dirt road. I never saw a dirt road. And I looked exactly where he went, and it's just a drop off into this field. That was the first weird part. But that was, you know, maybe I missed it. Maybe this old cop car on Highway 1, whatever, I just don't understand. And I could blow that off and continue my drive and everything's fine. But probably a half hour later, there's a right turn in this road where you turn and then you start going up a hill that goes towards the moon, essentially, out over the ocean. And I make this turn, and on the hill, it looked like the road was wet and shiny. And I was like, oh, that's weird. There's a water spill or something. And I could see as I got closer, my headlights were shining on this pile, a lumpy pile. And as I got closer, I was like, oh, maybe that's a big heap of trash bags. And when I got really close to it, all of the shiny, wet whatever that was on the ground, it was like a dark red. And I pulled over, I got out of my car, and I started walking up, and I couldn't figure out what it was. It wasn't trash bags. I knew that. And when I got close enough, it was hairy, and it ended up being a bunch of pigs, like big gray pigs, chopped in half. Just a pile of them. And all of that was coming down the road was blood. I could see my car tracks through it and everything. This time I didn't have a phone with a camera, or maybe I did, but the camera was a piece of like back in the day when you had those little Motorola cameras that could not take night photos. So I started getting into my DSLR to try to put it together to get a photo of it. And as I like had my back turned to the whole scene, I just got so freaked out. I had to get in my car, and I was like, I have to take a photo of this. And I was trying to turn around. I could not find my batteries to take a picture. I still beat myself up over that. Ended up being, they were on the charger at my friend's house in San Francisco. I was freaked out. I felt terrified, especially when I had my back turned to this whole bloody scene. I mean, it must have been 20 plus pigs cut in half, blood just dripping down this road. So I got in, I sped away. I was tired at that point too. It was probably 1, 2 in the morning, somewhere around there. And I got to my friend's house, went to sleep, woke up, and was telling them about that. And, of course, people are saying, oh, well, yeah, Highway 1's haunted. Didn't you know that? And I know I've heard people say Highway 1's haunted, but I've never heard a story of it being haunted. So I'm curious if you have history of other people talking about Highway 1 being haunted. I have heard some of these old stories of like old cop cars and, like phantoms on the road and everything. But I tried looking up, has there been incidents of pigs being slaughtered on the highway? And there actually 2 years before that was in 2006, a bunch of pigs that were essentially hit trying to cross the road on Highway 1. It didn't sound like it was that area, but it was that stretch of highway. So that's all I got, but it was an eventful night to say the least. All right. Thanks for what you do. Podcast is a blast. Bye.
Thank you, William. I think that's quite disturbing, and not something you want to run into on a lonely highway. Well, let's start out with a couple of facts. There are wild hogs in California, according to info pulled from an article at altaonline.com. Biologists estimate that there are over 100,000, or possibly a lot more, living large in all 50 California counties, and their numbers are growing exponentially. And just to be clear, these aren't the cute little 35-pound javelinas native to the Southwest. These are invasive, feral hogs that stand 3 feet high and 5 feet long, and can reach 500 pounds, run 30 miles an hour, and sport long, dangerous tusks. So I guess there could have been some scenario where a herd of wild pigs was run over, called, or some other gruesome incident took place, and perhaps the police were called, and they arranged what's left of the bodies to be picked up by sanitation, and then promptly left. Then William just so happens to drive by in that brief moment between when the police left and sanitation arrived. Now, there's actually a bit more evidence to support that theory, or at least make it possible. Believe it or not, there were several articles published in the early 2000s raising awareness about rising hog populations in the area and their effect on the local roadways. There's an example in tonight's show notes, if you'd like to take a look. But outside that theory, I'm sort of speechless here. If you Google pile of dead pigs, first of all, they put you on some sort of list. But also you'll see that there have been several instances where a pile of pigs have ended up on the roadway. There was an occurrence down in Sarasota, Florida, then again in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Canada, and it also happened down in Baton Rouge. Believe it or not, it actually happens a lot. Either a semi carrying live pigs wipes out, or a truck carrying pork or research cadavers, or sometimes, like I suspect might have happened here with William, these pigs stumble into oncoming traffic. And you know how that usually ends, with a pile of pig parts on the Pacific Coast Highway. Now, by the way, there are links to all of those examples I just gave you over in the show notes. Go visit monstersamonguspodcast.com and click the show notes tab if you want to take a look, though I'm not real sure why you would want to. Because like I said, this is all pretty gruesome. And of course, William, you didn't have your batteries with you. That's how this always goes. But take a bit of solace in knowing that at least in this example, I don't think a photo would have done a whole lot to help us solve this mystery. But now my feelers are out there, and I can ask you, audience, do you have any info that could help solve William's mystery? Give us a call at 888-608-NIGHT or shoot me an email at monstersamonguspodcast@gmail.com. Now, folks, that's going to do it for this one. Monsters Among Us is written and produced by me, Derek Hayes. Copyright Red Crow Media. Additional support is provided by Sarah Carter Hayes, Delaney Bowers, and Connor Ryan. All media used in this production is done so under the protection of fair use. Give us a like and follow on our social media pages. Give us a like and follow at YouTube. Of course, join our Discord. And leave us a rate and review wherever that sort of thing is possible. Now, don't forget you can catch the show every Saturday evening at 10 p.m. Eastern on the UNX Digital Network. Just visit unxnetwork.com to tune in. And finally, tonight's score was provided by Iron Cthulhu Apocalypse, Go.ag Music, and Carl Casey at White Pat Audio. Now watch the movie, or watch it again. That'll help make it possible to do another one down the line. That's Shadows in the Desert High Strangeness in the Borrego Triangle. Just visit borregotriangle.com or search us out on Tubi or Amazon Prime. And of course, we'd like you to join us in the Beyond, where you can pick up days worth of additional Monsters Among Us content, all for the price of a cup of coffee, or even cheaper. Just stick around until after this final ad spot to learn more. But until then,
They were enemies of the old aristocratic order is what I'm trying to say.
He has not coaching, quarterback play, some aging out of some guys.
When you turn 140 million,
now for all you newcomers out there, you just stumbled upon a closely guarded secret. The bonus entry. One more drink before last call. One last dive into the pool. Or a little ice cream treat after a pork chop dinner. It's here in the secret slot that we play the weirdest of the weird and the strangest of the strange. And tonight's offering is perfectly on theme. From the state of New Mexico, please welcome Rachel to the program.
Hey Derek, this is Rachel from rural New Mexico. I just have a little story about something really weird that happened. I was just wondering if you had anything to tell me, any information you had about this. So I'm just going to get into it really quick. So me and my friends, there was about 15 of us. We were all teenagers. It was really late at night. I think it was about 1 in the morning when we were hiking down from a really steep mountain. And it was really dark night, but the moon was super bright. So you could see the outline of the mountains, the outlines of the trees. And it looked kind of like early morning, but it was still really dark. And so we were just hiking down, and we started hearing a really, really weird sound. We were like, okay, what's going on? Because it sounded like it was following us. And it sounded like something was being ripped up, and something was eating something. It was really weird sound, really hard to explain, honestly. But so we were just hiking down, and we start to hear rustling in the bushes, and we look over, and we see this super crooked back, and it looked like it had spots of fur and spots that were just bare skin, like bones. And then it picked its head up. We were all freaked out because there was a whole line of us. We were all teenagers. We had nothing to use, nothing to do, and we were staring directly into this thing's eyes. It was about 20 yards away from us, and it's just staring at us. And its head appeared to not have skin on it, and it looked like this nasty deer head, but it was broken jawed, missing teeth. It was so disgusting looking. it had like nasty, like red eyes, but they were rotten. I don't even know. It was so scary. I've been around animals with mange a lot. I hunted growing up. I've been around so many animals that are nasty. Okay, like mangy, nasty animals. I know what that looks like. And this was different, completely different. So we were just like, what is going on? What the heck? So it starts to kind of walk away. So we keep looking at it because we're like, okay, it's walking away. We're safe. But then it like seems to smell something, and it turned around on us, looking right at us, and it looked like it was going to charge. So we literally just took off. And that's when I started taking a video. And I just have this video of me just saying, like, oh my gosh, what was that? I was like talking to my friend, and it was just like the scariest thing. I've heard things about wendigos. It seems kind of similar. So that's like basically the story. It was super scary. This happened about 5 weeks ago. So I don't know if you have any advice on what it was or what happened. I know what animals look like. And we also just had this like really bad feeling the whole time. So if you have like any advice or anything about what happened, I would love to hear your intel. Thank you so much. And I love listening to your show. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Rachel. Well, folks, what could this have been? Is there anything that might come to mind? Was it a monster of some sort? That is skinwalker territory, after all. Or do you think maybe Rachel's imagination got the better of her on a spooky evening? Regardless of the explanation, a tortured and twisted creature in the wilds of New Mexico, it's certainly a tale worthy of tonight's secret entry. So thank you again, Rachel, for making the call. Alright, folks, it's time to take my talents beyond. But you can come along for the ride, and you can do it for free. Just visit monstersamonguspodcast.com and click the Patreon tab. Once there, you can sign up to either Patreon or Apple subscriptions. Either one will get you access to literally days worth of content. And you'll get it all ad-free. And you can test drive it all for free for 7 days using their free trial. Of course, it'd be cool if you stuck around, but it's also great knowing that people are consuming this extra content, one way or another, because it's in the beyond that we share amazing tales like Sabrina's out of my state of California.
Hey Derek, my name is Sabrina. I'm calling from Northern California in the mountains. I am calling in response to your episode about shadow people. I didn't realize that other people had experienced what I had until listening to this podcast. So I wanted to talk about something that happened to me about a year ago when I had moved in with my now husband last fall. He immediately had to go work out of town about 2 hours away. And so we had started our relationship. We had started our newlywedship, and I was staying in his house by myself. Let me just also preface by saying that I see and sense entities, spirits, just what have you. I have my whole life, and that's just to say why I show a lack of fear later on in this story that I'm telling you. So, a little less than a year ago, I was staying in this house by myself. It was snowing outside. I was pretty vigilant, wanting to protect myself. Even though we live in a small mountain town, it's like less than 2,000 people. But I had this occasion where I woke up in the middle of the night, which honestly isn't rare for me at all. I woke up at around 3 in the morning, and I sit up in bed because there's this figure sitting at the edge of my bed. And I could tell it's a female figure. She was wearing a cloak, and it was a white cloak, but it wasn't regular white. It wasn't even quite opalescent. It was like the way the moon shines. It reminds me of a story recently that I listened to on this podcast about a person who had seen a cloaked figure on the subway whose cloak was the cosmos. This kind of reminded me of that. So anyways, I see this cloaked figure at the edge of my bed, and I sit up in the middle of the night, and I feel a sense of calm. I feel a sense of peace. but I feel something else to my right side, which, by the way, the bed is set so that the head of the bed is in line with the doorway to go into the bedroom.